So, the future of higher education. How are universities adapting to the new world? And of course, how is industry adapting to this new world? Thank you everyone for being here today, and welcome to TC Global's panel discussion on the future of higher education. I'm Bindu Chopra, your host for today, and I'm the principal consultant with the IR team, that's the International Relations team at TC Global. And joining me is a very distinguished panel. We have Dr. Robert Webb, who is a professor of banking and applied economics. He's also the Associate Dean, Global Engagement and Recruitment, and the Director of MSc programs within Stirling Management School. Professor Webb has an extensive knowledge of the global education sector. In fact, he's been to India a few times, specializing in student recruitment, agent relations, and developing MOAs with world-class universities, presenting research and guest lecturing. So welcome, Rob.
Cheers.
It's lovely to have you here.
Okay.
We have Ravneet Pawha, who's the Deputy Vice President, Global and CEO of South Asia for Deakin, University, Australia. She's over 27 years of experience in the international education sector, and Ravneet has been instrumental in developing Australian education collaborations, specifically for Deakin University in India, and has contributed to the immense success across the region. Welcome, Ravneet. It's nice to meet up again, though not in these circumstances, I suppose. We usually meet face to face. And we have Kishore Chainani representing industry, and he's not only a distinguished ACC certified leadership coach and trainer. Kishore has coached over 2,000 leaders and entrepreneurs from organizations like Adani, JSW Steel, Ambit, KPMG, Times Group, Genpact, you name it, and he knows it. Now that you know the panel, how about a little bit about TC Global? Well, a very short introduction would be that we started in 1995. We're 25 years old, and this COVID-19 pandemic has ruined it for us. We would have celebrated our 25 years, but we turned 25 in February, and of course, as you know, lockdown hit us in March. But having said that, we have, talked to, interacted with over 2.5 million students over the last 25 years, and we're well placed to now be able to help you along the journey. To our audience, we are really excited to host you and would love to hear from you. So feel free to send us questions on chat. This session will last roughly about 45 to 50 minutes with a 30-minute panel discussion followed by 15 minutes of Q&A, which we will take questions from you via chat. So if you have any questions for any of our panelists, please feel free to connect with us. So let's start. Now, my first thing is that so much of our world has changed over the last 6 months. We all crave for normalcy, but we also can't escape recognizing that COVID has forced and compressed years worth of change into literally weeks and months. These days, the only conversation is, when will the vaccine arrive? So, we're not talking about many, many, many years, but now. What are we going to do now? Unfortunately, the higher education has been impacted and confronts a disruption like never before, with restrictions on campus, on health, on social distancing measures, and for a population that has found it hard to practice social distancing. Our lockdown gets lifted and everybody is out on the streets. But the universities, on the other hand, have transitioned quickly into adopting a remote learning mode. But these changes raise important questions students are asking about university education. Our focus today is to explore how universities are embracing this new virtual world, recreating campus experience and rediscovering their role in an age in which technology is eating more and more of the world every year. So for our panelists, I would like to begin by asking each of you, how has this experience of the pandemic been for you? And talk to us about how you've managed to cope with the challenges that this may have brought to the forefront. Why don't I start with you, Ravneet, as the woman on the panel?
Thank you very much, Bindu, and a very good afternoon.
I think from
Good
this part
afternoon.
of the world to everyone and to the others. It's great to see people on the screen, but we have been tired of seeing people on the screen, I think, over the last few months, and we do want to see people in real too.
Too.
But yes, this world, which we all call the new normal, it looks very, very different because especially for higher education, because education is all about knowledge, skills, and the experience. And I think that all of these three things are so entangled that if you start to separate them out, you start to get a very fragmented approach to what education really means. Most universities in the world have struggled to make sure that they are able to support their students to the best of their abilities. People have been giving out aids to get people to continue to study online. Some universities that have been online universities, had it a little bit easier than the others, but I think a lot of the universities have struggled around the world. But the new normal, in my view, Bindu, is going to be a blended new normal. Right now as we speak, it is by force a very online focus. But I think that is sustainable. I think that is going to change, how people want to deal with each other in a classroom environment and have, good discussions about topical issues from people all over the world. So somewhere down the line, whether it is 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, I hope not, that we do get a chance to get back to this new normal. However, it's not going to be the same as it was. So it
Sure.
is not going to have 300 people in a lecture room, because we will have to maintain social distancing. And you hear these things about even if it is a vaccine that comes in, it's not going to be foolproof or whatever. So having said that, I think the good thing is that it has brought people closer virtually. It has made it possible to deal with different parts of the world through the virtual platform. Two, this anyway was to happen. The online space was anyway going to take off at some point of time, maybe over the next few years. It has
True.
happened now by force. So
True.
that's the second thing. I think the third thing is it has taught people to look at things differently and to be more resilient and to think out of the box. So these are, to me, the positives, and higher education is adapting to it, will continue to adapt to it. And I think that the students that come out stronger will be much, much better human beings, because they have gone through the grind and they have made it happen. So that's my personal view.
Fantastic. Rob, you're a teacher, you're a professor, and you've been one for a long time. By the way, our panelists look very young, but look at the years of experience they've got on this. So Rob, my question to you is the same. The pandemic has just disrupted higher education. Absolutely.
So yeah, I think it's definitely been a whirlwind. I think that the sector itself, I think that the academics have reacted quite well. There's been a lot of flexibility. I work across 2 or 3 universities, and the academics have all, especially because it hit in the middle of the semester and we had to put everything online. Everything went online quite quickly, and everybody reacted in good spirits and thought, right, we've got to do this. We've got to get everything online. And remember, in some of these universities I work in, the Russell Group universities and the QS 500, they're not used to moving quickly. So it was quite impressive to see how quickly the academics moved to make sure the student experience was still a good one, because obviously we went into lockdown and a lot of our students were in halls, and we had to look after the students and make sure they were still having an experience. But then came sort of the next phase of what are we going to do in September, what are we going to do in January. And the academics that I worked with were very quick, because we're putting on provisions in summer next year, and we're making sure that the calendar's sort of switching, because as everybody knows, in the UK, we've had the same model for years and years and years, and nothing ever changes. And we know what the stats are, we know what the applications are going to look like, we can tweak things here and there, we can introduce new courses, but it's pretty stable. And then this hits, and we've had to change everything. So we've not only got to change what the academics are doing and what the student experience is going to be like in the lecture theatre or online, but all the support services, and when do students graduate, and how are they going to get access to the libraries, and how, all the things that academics don't really think about, and they're all playing catch up. How do we market our courses? How do we maintain our relationships with agents? All of these things had to be looked at all at the same time. And we're in pretty cozy environment in the UK where we get a lot of international students. We've got high reputation universities, and that's all changed. And I think we were on the course anyway to have this blended approach. I mean, as you know, I've been in academia nearly 30 years, and I was running online distance learning courses in 2001, 2002 in Glasgow, and the whole cohort was Glaswegian. It wasn't in India or China. So the demand was for people who were working and wanted to do like night school, really. And so I'm still not convinced that online has a huge demand around the globe, but I think everything will move online, and I think people will choose their location. I think students will arrive in Stirling, and we'll have apps on our phone, and they'll be able to watch me lecture on their phone from a cafe, from a bar, and put in questions on Teams or on Skype or whatever we're using, and we'll be interacting with the audience, and we'll be interacting with students from around the globe and students in Stirling that didn't turn up to the lecture. So I think it's like you alluded to, I think it's speeded up the amount of change, and it's increased the flexibility. But I think we were going to get there. It just got us there a little bit sooner than we thought. And just speaking personally from the universities, it is still behind the scenes. It is still quite chaotic in terms of calendars and when we're lecturing and how we're lecturing. And that's not just Stirling, that's all the universities I advise. They're still running around going, when are we going to when is this, when is that? And so I think it will all calm down in the next 5 or 6 weeks. But yeah, I think we'll go to, like Ravneet said, I think we'll be a blended approach a lot quicker than we would have done without COVID.
And don't give our students ideas about studying on mobile phones sitting in a bar. That's not what professors do. Yes, Ravneet.
No, I was just going to say just exactly what Robert said, you know, that at the end of the day, it is going to be about blended learning, but it is going to be also a difficult approach for institutions because the whole experience of overseas education, international education, is learning off each other as well. And that becomes difficult when you are sitting in the comfort of your home or a hostel or a place where your social skills, you know, just don't get the exposure that you should ideally be getting.
Fair enough. On that very happy note, you know, let me ask Kishore, you know, you're outnumbered today with 2 people from education, but you're the balancing voice. The universities are, you know, doing their bit, but industry has also been disrupted, isn't it?
Yes, very much. And see, ultimately, I think the way I would like to look at it is that the universities are grooming these students to ultimately come and work for a very long period of their lives, you know. I would assume people work till 75, 80 today. Like my dad is 82, he's still working, you know, doesn't want to let go. So the whole normal, as you say, is already gone past the roof, you know. So, and what I hear, and I've been speaking in the last 3 months to a lot of my colleagues, heads of HR, etc., the challenges have changed. For people who are working from home, they say there is no boundary line. I seem to be starting at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., ending at 11, 12 in the night. And people are not hesitating to call at odd hours, which is very strange for some reason, you know. Otherwise, they would stop calling as soon as you leave office. There's no calling at home, right? But then that distinction seemed to have disappeared. The other thing that has happened is that the HR leaders are complaining that the productivity has gone down despite the long hours. If the productivity is going down, then we need to understand why that is happening. Maybe what Ravneet said is the resilience, the inner resilience, right? When you're home, it's very different. The environment is different. From neurosciences, we understand that the brain is not used to it. At home, you seem to be more relaxed. Your brain is not as effectively working. Maybe that's why the productivity is suffering. So these are some challenges that the industry is really dealing with. So as far as the norm getting shifted, we don't know. I would not like to really predict into the future because it's such a dynamic world today. It's very difficult, very difficult. The positives, however, are that if I had to meet a client and I'm a salesperson, then the number of meetings that I can do online are far more in a day because I save on that travel time, etc. And my energy that gets consumed in travel is so much saved. So in fact, my productivity or efficiency should go up as time goes by, as my mental resilience builds up, and as I get used to this environment. It should happen ideally, which is great in a way. The other is that the boundaries, the geographical boundaries have completely disappeared. I can reach out to anywhere. And I'm sure not just as an organization, my client can be anywhere now. It's also for the students. Like they could learn from anywhere, reach across to any place. So in a way, I think there are positives. And yes, there are certain things we all need to get used to and adapt.
Well, as you said, location doesn't matter anymore. You're sitting in Jaipur. Ravneet is in Delhi. Rob is sitting in Glasgow. I'm sitting in Bangalore. So there you are, where we're having a panel discussion.
And you're all looking young. Imagine.
Well said. Well said. Great understanding. On this note, Ravneet, I'm going to ask Rob about the delivery models, but even our way we are contacting students now has completely, changed. And some of the students are resisting it. I mean, they're resisting the online. Why are they so scared of the online learning?
Bindu, I don't think they are scared. I think that they don't see this as effective or as real as the real world.
Or worthwhile.
Yeah, or worthwhile. I remember, just when all of this happened, even for me to get used to the fact that I was not going to see my staff every day, and that we will be operating from a different environment, was a little bit of a sort of a time lag. It took me a while to really get to a point to say, no, this is going to be it. And people will be working from different locations. They will be doing their bit, but it is just going to look different, And I think the same is for the students as well. Like my son, he's currently studying a master's degree in Australia. And, it took him, like he was keen to do it. He said, Mom, I know it's going to be online, but I still want to do it because I want to experience the online. So kids are getting used to it. Kids are getting accustomed to it. But there is still that, I won't say a negative tagline, but there is that question mark on their faces as to, really, is this how it's going to be? You mean I'm not going to actually meet everyone? And you actually think this is really the right way to do it? Which is why there's a lot of debate about the fee the universities are charging for online as well. Like for example, at Deakin, we don't distinguish between the quality of education that you are getting through a screen or through a lecturer, because it is that excellence part that we are focusing on. But for a student, it is not the same.
True.
So I think they are going to struggle with it. But having said that, I also feel that it is up to the industry. Sorry, Kishore, I'm going to put you on a spot here. But I think it is up to the industry to also get this wave out into the sector to say, we acknowledge online as par, and as equivalence and as good as on campus. For most institutions, there will be some dodgy institutions everywhere in the world who will be making money out of this approach, and who will want to say that just putting content on the computer or in a hard disk is content online. But having said that, I have this sense and feeling that at least 70% of the institutions, will do a good job and will make sure that they are able to train and expose their kids to the best of the abilities through the online platform. So it will be a mind change shift. It will happen.
Yes.
It'll take a while. It'll happen. It'll happen.
It'll happen. Rob, it will happen. Are your delivery
I think I've been having
models?
the same argument before COVID. And I think you can get quite siloed. I think professors who are sat in rooms doing their research and getting their 4-star and international grants and all of this can get disconnected from what students actually want. But when you travel the world like I do, students, the first thing they want to do is have a nice experience. That's why they choose to go to Edinburgh or come to the beauty of Stirling or go to Manchester, because they want to be in those cities. So, I mean, my son's just choosing his MSc and he's done his first degree in Edinburgh, but he wants to go to Germany. He's not interested in doing online in Germany. He can do online at any university. He wants to continue his travels and to have the experience abroad and meet and get embedded in German culture and learn the language. So I think, when 20 years I've been traveling, students will choose the country first and think, oh, I want to spend time in Britain or America or Australia or whatever, Canada. And then they think, oh, which university should I do? Oh, which subject should I do? So I think that we might, and getting to Ravneet's point, I think students are finding it difficult to see the value added of doing an online course if they're still going to be sat in their parents' home and interacting in that kind of way, and they're not getting their freedom of moving away and experiencing a different culture. So I think there is definitely an online market, but I think it might be a slightly different market. It might not be the students that are in their early 20s or want to leave to do their undergraduate. It might be a market where students studied in India and then went into the job market, got so far, can't afford or don't want to travel anymore, and then they want an online course to get the MSc in order to progress their career. So I think we might have a disaggregated type of market. And getting back to Ravneet's point about interaction, I think that's really key. I have an open door policy. My door is open to students to drop in at any time. And that, again, has changed over the last 3 or 4 years. Before COVID, I've got lots of students on WhatsApp, WeChat, Facebook, all of these different interactions. And they'll be asking me questions, and it gets back to Kishore's point. You never switch off. I was having a conversation about econometrics with a student at Nottingham at 10:30 on Thursday evening about what data they should be selecting. And that has changed over COVID because they're just contacting you all the time. So I think if we are going to move to an online world, the universities have to really signal the value added to the student, how they're going to interact, and whether that's going to be worth their while. And I do think they'll start disaggregating prices. I think, when you go into places like Warwick and it's 35,000 for the MSc, you're not going to pay 35,000 for online. So I think there will be a price. There'll be a convergence on a price for online. There'll be a convergence for a price if you come into campus, and you've got to signal the safety and the masks and all of this over the next 18 months. And I actually think more. I think that because a lot of, as you'll be aware, a lot of the Russell Group are packing them in. So you go and do MSA Finance and you're with 200 students. I think there'll be a separate course where you're only with 20 students and it's even more expensive. And you get that more interaction. So I think there'll be different types of models come out of this that we were moving to anyway, and COVID has increased the speed of change, I think.
Yeah.
Has accelerated it.
Sorry,
Kishore, Ravneet mentioned that.
I just want to say that
sure.
I think the real challenge will be to create a blended model post-COVID, where a student is in the country, experiencing the country, maybe 40% on campus, 20% in the, your self-study, and then maybe another few, dealing in online. So I think that will be the real outcome of how we progress to the models, which will have a blend of the best of the three worlds.
Perfect. Kishore, Ravneet mentioned that it's very much for all of us who work with students to say the online is good. It's a great way of starting. It's not going to be the end. You are going to go face to face. But industry, a lot of questions come in saying that will the online learning impact my employability? I mean, will employers accept the fact that part of my course was online?
Yeah, I see.
Your views
That's
on
a very valid point. How I would like to this to be viewed is, like with everything, it sometimes takes time for things to evolve and settle down. Like Ravneet also said, it's a mindset issue, and I think
we don't have time. We don't.
yeah, I know. We would like to say that, but the thing is, see, the proof of the pudding is in eating it. So, I have two kids who returned from US mid-March because of COVID. Okay, and my daughter is in Savannah College of Art and Design, and she's learning painting. While my son is doing economics, he can do online. My daughter says last final year, I can't do online. It's practical stuff. I have to be there to learn it, right? So now ultimately it's about learning. It's about imbibing your mindset, the skill set that you need to be able to effectively deliver at the workplace. Now, how quickly can everyone adapt? It's not just about the industry to say yes online. They're discovering that the client meeting, how do I make the client meeting most effective? Like how do I get the client to say yes on an online meeting versus a offline meeting? Face to face.
Face to face.
So similarly, I think it's for the universities to find new ways. Like, how do you get the energy across in a lecture, which in a room, face to face was fine, but online? How do you get that interaction happening so that you don't lose the attention? And I've attended so many master classes in the last 3 months. I'm sure everybody has. And I've seen a few people just go overboard. They want you to keep typing in the chat box. There are people monitoring the chat box besides the person who's speaking. They're making sure that the whole experience is very different so that the energy of every participant is so high that they are absorbing everything in the subconscious. So these models have to evolve, and I'm sure some of the universities will be faster in this process of making sure that the learning is very effective versus the others. And yes, the institutions, organizations rather, are also realizing the effectiveness, and mindsets are settling in. Yes, this is the way of life going forwards, and people are becoming okay with it. Meetings being offline versus, online and offline. Yeah.
Online. Yeah. Tell me, if I put you on a spot and say, what are the skill sets that employers are looking for? Before we ask the education guys how they are, getting the skill sets on board.
See, that's a very good question. And that's one question, thankfully, that used to get asked even before COVID to me always. Okay. On what does the industry want? Most people wonder. And, unfortunately, there's always a gap. It was there before, it's still there, And my last assignment was with GenPack, where we used to spend almost 3 months training these students after they came back from college. We had to put in that kind of effort, and we used to hate it because it's a huge cost, but we found that gap that we had to bridge. So what are these skill sets? That's a great question. So one is that as soon as you move from college, I think it's the mindset. People go to college, you have to enjoy. They want to enjoy. Whereas when you come to the job, it's about it's about being able to sit, understand at one place for many long hours. Students are not used to that, number one. Number two, students are not used to just listening and following instructions. That's so difficult. Number three, the whole issue around how we've been raised in schools and colleges is that I am competing with the boy or the girl sitting next to me. Whereas in an organization, the mindset completely changes into how do I collaborate with everybody here? If I am better than the other, then my boss expects me to help the others, which somehow I'm not used to mentally again. So teamwork, collaboration, and influencing people, influencing skills. Again, see, during college or school, what I'm focusing on is mugging things up and just blurting it out during the examination. Whereas that doesn't work. That philosophy doesn't work at the workplace. At the workplace, it's about, okay, listening intently to this client of mine and understanding what does he really want and how can I serve him really? How do I go out of the way and find ways? So creativity, innovation, resilience, all these things come into the picture, which problem solving.
Problem solving. Problem solving. Yeah. I'll give both of you a chance. I know you both, are two different perspectives on this. Rob, you've been smiling the most, so we'll give it to you first. About what the buzzwords are: agility, resilience, problem solving, keeping a good, mindset over a skill set. How does the university, do they change their curriculum?
Yeah, interesting. As Kishore said, this isn't new because of COVID. This has been going on for years and years and years, and probably been discussed in certainly every decade I've been lecturing. I think again the sector is quite slow to react. The skills you require in the business world are quite different to some of the more traditional universities are looking for in assessments. Although I think and again before COVID. And COVID is speeding things up because you can see all the discussions going on in forums that I'm on about how we change assessment. A lot of universities, a lot of traditional universities have got rid of exams for the next 18 months. And it's going to signal quite a change, I think, into the future. But I remember when I was at Nottingham, we were in a big meeting with about 250 academics, and everybody was complaining about how poor the students were and how they weren't they weren't reacting to the 3,000 word coursework or the exams. And the head of learning and teaching stood up and said, why don't you change your assessments? Why don't you change your assessments to be more appropriate to what the business world requires and what skills you actually want to develop? So the resilience and the negotiation and all of this. And I all right, let's try that. So I changed my assessment to a 20-minute presentation in groups of 4, and it was incredibly impressive. There was me and 2 other professors in the sessions. They went on for 3 or 4 days, and they were brilliant. And previously, we'd spent our time moaning about how bad students were at attacking the 3,000 word coursework. But it's very unlikely in a setting of work that you're going to do a 3,000 word coursework. And the way that they got down, this was on banking, analysed banks all over the world, was mightily impressive. So I think the way that the institutions in the UK are going about this is we're having business forums, we're linking with businesses, we're getting business people in the lecture theatre. There's a rise in professors of practice where we're talking to these all the time, and we're taking advice of them. And certainly at Stirling, we've got a business forum that is very active. And I have 2 life coaches from business that tell me on a monthly basis what's going on in business, and we are tailoring what we do at Stirling in line with the business world. So it's changed over the last 5 years, and again, COVID will just speed it up.
Ravneet, you want to add to that? How are universities coping with upskilling other than academics?
Yeah, sure. Bindu, I think the world is moving also towards the concept of micro-credentialing, which is basically talking about how you are able to exhibit your life skills. Knowledge is important, and knowledge can be tested through an exam and through a group discussion and all of that. I say that I'm a good team player. How would you know that? Unless you really understand, and I can almost justify it through my experiential work. And I think that at Deakin University specifically, we've done something quite smart. We've come up with a course which is called Masters of, in fact, all of this is embedded in all of our courses. So life skills, whether you talk about agility, resilience, communication, teamwork, all of these aspects, as part of your work, you have to pick up these short courses, and you have to keep talking about different levels on how you can showcase your abilities and life skills, which are embedded in all of our courses. But we also have a course which is called Masters of Professional Practice. Now, what that does is it has a micro-credentialing model where we have picked up the 21 life skills based on the OECD report. And we have talked about how at different levels, in the industry, you need to get yourself accredited at world standards with it. And you do, like in this case, you do 11 of those, those which also includes things like leadership and all that. And you do 2 capstone units, and you do a research project, and you have a master's. So the world is also moving towards bite-sized knowledge, bite-sized skilling, because if I am working in the corporate, and Kishore will perhaps agree with me on this, I need my person to be able to do the job that they are hired for at that point of time. I'm not going to necessarily wait for him to get a master's degree, So I'm saying that your skill set is here, and this is what, okay, you want to upskill here, do this capsule, do this module, and you will be able to upskill. So we have to get our students, I think, whether at the undergrad level or at the postgrad level, or people in the work area who are upskilling, to understand that knowledge, skills, and your accredited value, people want certifications, they want degrees, all have to go hand in hand. Just one or the other is not enough in this complex world that we live in. I mean, resilience, who would have thought that you were never going to be on a plane for 4 months? You were never going to be able to get out of your house. And for someone like me, who travels like every week, I had to be resilient. So, and that you can't get through a degree, So you have these, and going into the future, as whatever we call them, life skills or soft skills or whatever they are extremely important for getting the best out of people and out of yourself. So I think that is the important part that I'd like to emphasize on.
Kishore, would short-term courses, short-term certifications in this time when people are hanging around and not knowing what to do, are they valuable for students?
I think from what I can draw from your question, as well as Ravneet mentioned, see, I hardly know of organizations who would, when hiring, put a cutoff to which university you are from. Most of the organizations will do a psychometric assessment, which will evaluate you on your true skills. They will get that. They don't care. The organization doesn't really care in terms of which university you've gone to or which course, short-term, long-term, medium-term you've done. As long as they can evaluate you on the real skills that you possess. So I think increasingly it will also become the student's responsibility to understand what I really want in life, what kind of job am I visualizing myself to do, and what kind of skill sets that will need me to acquire, and how am I going to acquire those? So what kind of courses will I pick? I think this will become a huge thing for people to help students to discover their passions, to discover what they really want to do, on what will make them happy and fulfilled. They identify that. And then what kind of jobs does that really mean? And then what kind of courses will help you get that kind of skill set to be able to be successful in that kind of job. So this whole thing, if we can figure out for people, I think that is where the future is.
So you're talking to a 20-year-old to figure out his whole life story, which is not going to happen. I mean, my father stayed in one job and retired as the head of the company, and everybody said, terrific. Today, I'm sure there are a lot of people who look at me and say, 20 years with TC Global, for God's sake, she can't be very good. I mean, she hasn't moved out. So there's a mindset that is changed, considerably changed. So that is a given. I was just looking at, if we don't really have very many questions, so people are liking what we are saying. They don't need clarification, so maybe we can just do a couple of more questions, and then before we wrap up. My thing is that the other thing is resources. How do we deal with higher education with limited resources that the pandemic has, sort of brought out into the open?
I think that's
Rob, would you
difficult
like to
because
take
as we
that?
switch, we're assuming, and this happened in the UK in schools, never mind universities, as everybody switched, everybody was sent home, it was assumed that everybody could access things on the internet. But in Glasgow, as many of you will know, there's quite high levels of poverty, and the schools that my children go to, not everybody has access or internet access or even a table to work at, and this has been a huge issue. And I don't know how the sector is going to solve that. I know that when they moved, because my son, as you know, is doing the chemical engineering at Edinburgh, they moved everything online and the assessments online, and then they hit the next problem that people were saying, well, I don't have the facilities, I don't have a computer to undertake an online test, and so they had to switch everything around in order to facilitate those students. And I think this could be a huge issue if it's online learning, that the sector might have to react and start giving people computers and access to the hardware. But then you still have the problem of access to the internet. So I think that could be an issue, not obviously for the middle class of the world, but for those accessing from the working class. And the UK has been trying to widen participation to all for 20 years with not much success. You know, the amount of the middle class that accessed the Russell Group is exactly the same proportion as it was in 1910 in the UK. So, you know, I think this could be a huge issue. But I've looked into, when I was working in Nottingham and now at Stirling, we're looking at giving scholarships, not just for the fees, but for flights, accommodation, subsistence, and so I think the sector will move to helping those students that haven't got access to those things.
Fair enough. I mean, they also have aspirations, and if it's a good student, we hear such wonderful stories in India of poor laborers, or people, underprivileged people whose children are doing so brilliantly well under very, very difficult circumstances. So yeah, I wish more universities would come forward and say, let's help them. Outside the country, more difficult, but at least even within the country would be great.
Fought for 3 years for an increase in scholarships for any university I work at. And I've been so much. I've won that battle many, many times. But if you're in India or in China, if you come from certain backgrounds and you're getting and you're on for a first undergraduate, or you've done really well in your first exams at school to get into university, I argued for Nottingham. I'm having the same discussion. I've only been at Stirling for 7 months to have the course for free, and I won that battle at Nottingham. So you can apply for certain circumstances and get a full discount, and that will be happening as well at Stirling in the near future.
But can I? Now, I was going to come in with a view about universities and resources. When you talk about resources, yes, of course, one is at the student end, but also, universities would like to do so much in terms of exhibiting online capacity and capability and making it as interactive and as excellent as possible. And the downside of that, and if I take in particular Indian scenario, in that is that a lot of the Indian universities, they may be excellent undergraduate learning universities face-to-face, but they will not be able to deliver the same result online because of the lack of resources and because of the lack of understanding and capacity and capability to turn all of this into an online platform. Now, the Western universities, I think the Western universities would have more understanding and resources to do that. But I think that will also divide how universities, that are in different parts of the world will react to this new, the change of COVID and education.
Yeah, true. True. All right. On a final note, I know we've got questions, guys. Ramanjit, you want to know what is the procedure of online visa applications? I'm afraid unless you tell me the country, I'm going to find it very difficult to tell you what it is. But nothing has changed. All processes remain the same. If you're visiting our expo, just go to the expo, go to the visa desk, and they will help you right away. And any other questions that you have in specifics, just contact our RM team in expo, and they will be in a better place to give you an answer. On my final question, that I really want to pick on is that what do you see as the future of the universities? I mean, are they going to be exactly the way they were now, that they were before pre-COVID, or are they going to also change in their approach?
So
Ravneet, you want to go first?
Bindu, I think that we've learned is that the one thing that will happen is change. That is the one thing that will happen.
That's the one thing. Yeah,
and
constant.
I think that applies to the university sector as well. Actually, it applies to the education sector, even at school and even in the universities. Having said that, what I would like to emphasize on is that continuous innovation and methodology in terms of how you adapt and adopt to the newness of creating models that are that have the right accessibility to a wider reach, because I think universities have to understand that their big position is creating the next generation of people that are knowledgeable, that are skilled, and that are able to contribute and change the societies they live in. So I think to keep that objective in mind, universities will have to be more affordable, they will need to be more accessible, and they will need to be more innovative in their approach to deal both nationally and internationally on both. Technology, how do you embed technology? How do you use artificial intelligence and data analytics for education? So I think EdTech, if you call it EduTech, is going to be the future. And I think that it will have to be a lot of focus on flexibility. Gone are the days where kids are going to be sitting 9 to 5 in a classroom. Maybe some select universities will continue to do that. Maybe that will happen. Maybe there will be the traditional ones. But I think the innovation, the change will happen to the majority of the world, where it is going to take students to places. Choices will be many. So one will have to be highly competitive, and it is going to be led by change.
Well, Rob, I was going to give you that. Please tell if universities will teach offline, but you've already answered it for the UK. Guys, we don't know. If we knew,
we're planning both. So
Rob, what about future of
Stirling is planning both.
University.
So we're currently, we don't know because nobody knows across the sector, but we are planning to have to welcome students in October, and we're planning not to welcome students in October. So we've got both, and that will obviously move us to this blended learning that we keep talking about. But I certainly, COVID is, should I say, dying down slightly in the UK. We're not, and especially in Scotland, and Stirling is 30 or 40 miles outside of Glasgow and Edinburgh. So we're out in the countryside. We can lock down the campus. We can have the safety and the masks and the alcohol gels and all of this. So I think we could probably, and we are looking into having a safe environment in Stirling, whether it's a safe environment that students want, because you can't move around or go to Germany or France or London, or it won't be as free to move around. I don't know, but I'm a little bit more cynical than Ravneet. I've been in the sector 30 years. Hardly anything's changed. We just talk about change and then moan about change. And
oh, come on, that's not true. We've all changed. Look, you and I are talking to each other. You and I are talking to each other on the screen.
I can't think of anything.
Let's have a fight
about change.
I agree.
All the professors they're working harder now than they were 10 years ago, but they were saying that 10 years ago. In the UK, they've become obsessed with 4-star grants, the research exercise, but that happened 20 years ago. Most people are still standing in front of 50, 60 students and sort of shouting at them. There's about 10% of the cohort of staff in the UK sector that are have presentations and get interaction and take questions and use buzzers and all of these kinds of things that have happened in the sector. But it is by no means ubiquitous across the sector. And as Bindu said on the conversation I was having with her last night, in the Russell Group, that will take a lot longer. We have very traditional academics in the sector, and outside of that sector, maybe you will get change, but it's slow. And I can audit the Moodle pages or the Canvas pages or the Blackboard pages of universities. I can get access to 200, and you see 20 or 30 absolutely brilliant ones, and then there's a lot of ones that are just dumping information on there. So I think that change in academia is sort of disaggregated. You've got a lot of people moving quickly to change, and you've got a lot of people being dragged slowly. And the other thing that I always say in meetings is that I think it's quite strange that we think you can have an academic that is absolutely brilliant at research, absolutely brilliant at lecturing, and absolutely brilliant at being an associate dean or a dean. I think it's unrealistic. You can be a brilliant lecturer, you might be a brilliant researcher, but being brilliant at all three, it's highly unlikely, I would suggest. But I've seen probably two or three in 30 years. But I've seen some brilliant teachers and I've seen some brilliant researchers. But whether they're all the same person, I'm not quite convinced. But I'm very Ravneet.
You really are a cynic.
Bindu, I was talking to my vice chancellor, and we are in the midst of doing our next strategic plan. And I said to him, so timely, it's good to do the strategic plan in COVID times. And he said to me, what do you think we should be focusing on? I said, the three things I would say is agility, resilience, and change. And if the university...
Ravneet, have you ever seen a strategic plan that a university has actually succeeded in delivering, and a strategic plan that actually tells you how much money is going towards that plan and how are they going to do it? Because if you have, can you send me one? Because I always turn around and how are you doing that?
I'll tell you the trick. We'll chat offline.
Kishore, you and I can leave.
Robert, you and I can chat offline.
Kishore, you can absolutely probably come to fisticuffs. Kishore, on this note, industry, you can see that universities are very passionate about coping and changing, and whether it's the way Rob says, being dragged into it, because they've transitioned pretty quickly into this online. Some have done it happily because they were already in the process. Some have done it, his words, being dragged into it, but they've done it. So it'll take them a little longer. But how is industry, coping with this? Are they really hiring right now? What is the mood? Because right now, location doesn't matter. May the best man be selected. You could be sitting in Timbuktu and have the necessary skills. So how is industry taking?
Your last line says it very well. See, we said geographies will disappear, and that's already happening, because you might be somebody from a very small town or village. As long as you have an internet connection and you have the necessary hardware, you could be providing services from there. So there is a lot of change, I think, massive change that's going to happen. So maybe companies will not have employees. Maybe they'll have more contractual arrangements. For example, they will pay basis the productivity per unit processed, and far more people can work now. So it could be housewives who get 2 hours in the afternoon when their children are sleeping, could work for 2 hours and yet make money. See, all different kinds of models will throw up now, slowly and slowly. To your point on hiring, look, it's a shift again happening. I know of companies I'm helping hire, and they need people in huge numbers, and they're struggling as well, because like we discussed, the skill set suddenly has changed. They're also discovering, okay, now what new skill sets do I need to give more weightage to, which I previously wouldn't have. In the old environment, I would have probably given them less weightage. So all this change is happening, and all this we're going through, and people are evolving their thinking as we speak. Definitely, see, that also is challenging a lot of people to think differently and to work new models. All this is happening. Yes.
In fact, somebody very nicely mentioned that today's interviewing, we can end on that, when you go for an interview, employers are now asking, other than what you've studied and what your skill sets are, they want to know, what did you do in 2020? I mean, did you lie down and play dead? Or did you get up and do something about it? And I thought that was a very good, I mean, if somebody asked me, what did you do in 2020? I'd probably have to say I've never worked so hard in my life.
The one word that came to my mind, the one word that came to my mind was struggle.
Well, on some levels, between the cooking and the cleaning as well. But yes, we've met a lot. I can't thank you enough, Rob, Kishore, and Ravneet. It's been absolutely delightful. I hope everybody else has enjoyed it as much as I have, talking to all of you. Thank you very, very much for being part of our TC Global set of panel discussions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.